Okay, hello and welcome. I am Hanna Ljungh, and I'm standing in my studio here at VIP Stockholm, which is a studio collective with over 80 artists. And I'm here today to talk about my film, I Am Mountain to Measure Impermanence, that is currently showing, as Tini said, in the atrium of Stockholm School of Economics, and I'm really happy about that. So I think I will show the film here in my studio as well, since most of you unfortunately probably haven't been able to see it in the atrium. So I will take my computer and put it here and get the papers in order. There we go. Okay. So today I wanted to show you this film, and I'm going to actually start it. And I'm going to talk about the film and some other works that I have here in the studio. And I'm also going to talk about measurability, which is something that I'm really interested in. But to start with, let's talk about this film. I Am Mountain to Measure Impermanence is a 5.5-hour long film. And it's shot on the specific day of the measurement of Kebnekaise's southern summit. And this film was shot in 2015 and then screened for the first time in 2016. And the setup is that the camera is placed on the northern summit, and we are gazing towards the southern summit, which is what you see here, which at the time when I shot the film was the highest point in Sweden. And from the beginning, to tell you a bit of the background of the film, I got in touch with Tarfala Research Station, which is the research station located just below the mountain, and from there they make all the measurements. The Professor Gunhild Rosqvist is the one who goes up on the summit every year at the end of the summer when the glacier has melted as much as they think it would melt that year, and before the first snow comes. So this is usually in August or beginning of September. This year, when I made the film, it was the 25th of August. And I was interested in this particular mountain and this glacier top because it is almost a monument of climate change. And it's our highest peak and has been for a long time. Not today in 2020, but it was in 2015. And from the beginning, I had this really bombastic plan that I was going to make a film for 7 days and 7 nights leading up to this day of measurement, kind of a reversed Genesis. But I scrapped this plan. It was not practical, and I kind of hesitated about this biblical theme. But anyways, from the beginning, I thought of the film as a still image extended in time. And with references to iconical work like Andy Warhol's Empire, where he and Jonas Mekas, another artist, films the Empire State Building for 8.5 hours. And their comment to the film is that they just wanted people to come and watch time pass by. And my film does a similar thing, but I think with I Am Mountain to Measure Impermanence, there's another dimension to this, because we are watching time pass by, but at the same time we have the creepy fact that something not visible to the human eye is going on, namely the ice is melting. So this film is a reflection also on something that we can't really detect with the human eye, but that we by fact can prove with all the measurements made that it's shrinking quite drastically. And it has been shrinking almost 25 meters in the last 20 years. And So, I mean, I'm filming this monumental mountain, just as Warhol and Mekas. And I have made a very long film portraying this national monument of ours. But in my case, perhaps the monument I'm portraying has become a monument of climate change, as I just said. The glacier. And I wanted to read a short passage to you from the book On Photography by Susan Sontag. And I think this captures a lot of the essence of what it is to relate to an object or by photographing it. And she has written extensively about this, but I'm going to read a short passage that I think is quite suitable. So this is the book that I'm going to read from, Classic. So the quote goes like this: "All photographs are memento mori. To take a photograph is to participate in another person's or thing's mortality, vulnerability, mutability. Precisely by slicing out this moment and freezing it, all photographs testify to time's relentless melt." So I think it's a nice quote, and it's very suitable for this film. And as you can see, something is happening in the film. Right now we have a lot of clouds. And what I realized after making the film is that there are a lot of people actually climbing this mountain. So if we can skip forward a bit here in the film. You will see there are a lot of people climbing this mountain because it was Sweden's highest peak. And it's relatively easy to get up there. And so to me, this was, after I made the film, I was still really anxious to get, to have the facts, have this series of measurements in the work. Because I was preparing for an exhibition where I had the film as a centerpiece, but then I was preparing to make other works, artworks, to go along with it. And I had this series of measurements that I got from the Tarfala research station. Looks like this. And it's one of the longest measuring series of a glacier. So they're very proud of this, and I think it's really important because it shows exactly what I've been talking about, that the glacier is melting very rapidly. But to me, to have this in an exhibition didn't feel too sexy, to be honest. It wasn't it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted the facts to be there, but I wanted to transform it in somehow. So my challenge here was how to make facts into art. How do I go from one system to another? So I decided I would make a sound piece. I would read all the measurements like this: 1981, 2,111 meters. And I did this with all the measurements going from 1902 to 2015 when I made the film. So I had this sound piece that was about 14 minutes long. But then I was thinking, okay, so I can have this like a voiceover, but still I wanted to connect more deeply with the mountain, and I was kind of thinking about what does a mountain sound like? What does ground sound like? And to me that's a very low level vibration or a quake, small earthquakes or that kind of sound. So I decided to take this sound, my voice, and make it 5.5 hours instead of 14. And the sound becomes super low, more like vibrations and earthquakes. And I think I will play it for you. And at the same time, I will also turn on my seismograph that I built together with this sound. And afterwards I will talk a bit more about how it all connects together. Okay, we have that. And as an effect of prolonging this sound, I of course have really long pauses as well. You have sound and then you have pauses. So I think we just hit one of those really long pauses. But I think we will be patient and just see if it kind of rumbles on. And at the same time, I can speak a little bit about this seismograph, which this is a handmade seismograph. I made this together with a colleague, Isaac Nordell. So here we go. Now it starts. So this is the sound, and the seismograph feels the sound, or it's a little thing that records the movement of the sound. So in theory, this is a seismograph. I would probably get really bad reviews from a scientist because, so it's a seismograph, or you could call it a drawing machine. This becomes like a 25-meter long drawing of my voice reading the recordings, at the same time pretending to be a mountain or sounding like a mountain. So this goes on for 5.5 hours, and it's a part of this piece. So I mean, this to take the scientific data and make it into art was fun, and it was also, to me, I wanted the viewer to meet not facts and numbers, but to sense something, to come into the exhibition and hear and feel physically what was going on. And then, I mean, all the facts are there, but we can't really decipher them in the format they are now. But to me, it was important that everything was in there, but in a language or in a manner that we can't really pinpoint what it is. But now I've explained it all to you. You can decide for yourself if this is a possible way of doing things. And at the same time, I also made this drawing. This is a representation of the northern peak. So this is a frottage, which is a nice word for tracing. So I traced the highest the highest stone on the northern peak. And at the time, I called this piece, I Am Mountain the Waiting. Yep, now we turned off the sound. And here's my computer. But I think we pretty much heard what we needed. So all of these pieces have a relation to each other. And to me, it was important to have this entanglement of body, human body, and the mountain. My voice actually saying what is doing the impact on the mountain, and at the same time doing a sound that sounds like a mountain. And also in this exhibition or in this work, I've been really interested in notions of time and different notions of time. And I mean, first we have the geological time, the time of the mountain, which is super slow. And we don't even really manage to think in that way, I think. And then you have the glacier time, the melting of the glacier. And then you have film time. The way we make films and how we relate to a recorded film and how we are really tuned into a certain way of looking at film. And you also have one form of human time which is the real time, the time of filming the mountain. No cuts and just a straight film. And then you also have the gathering of facts over time, which is 113 years of measurements from 1902 to 2015. And you have the attention span of the viewer, which I am working on now. But how long can you actually bear to look at this film? And I mean, you can try in your at Handels. If you, how long is it possible to sit, or does it change you in any way to sit and look at something that long? I don't know. You probably have to try. And then it's the time associated with climate change. And here we have a real urgency, I would say. What kind of time do we have? No one knows. It's super uncertain. But most people understand that we don't have that much time to change. And then the last thing, which might be a bit abstract to talk about, but which I've been really interested in before I made this film as well, is the verticality of time. The direction of going this way instead of this way. Because we usually think about time as something linear and horizontal. But to me, it's really interesting to think about time as layers, stratas, as you would say in a geological sense. And the embodiment of time in material. When something becomes, like for instance, this image, which is standing here, it's this is where I've built layers of time in my studio as a piece of art, kind of working with this notion of time as a physical thing, because usually time to us is very floating and very hard to grasp and abstract. To be honest. So this was a presentation or explanation or a talk about I Am Mountain to measure impermanence. And now I think I'm going to go over to another set of works that I've been working on more recently, which are called Curiosity Cabinets. And they have a really long title, and it's Curiosity Cabinets, You, Me, Rock, Mountain, Commodities of the Quantified Universe. And so I'm going to move around a bit with this. I'm going to take away the computer. Here we go. And I'm going to take away this. And I'm going to move this one, perhaps, so you can see it a bit closer. Can you? Let's see. Yeah, this is pretty good. So this is one of my curiosity cabinets. And I'm going to tell you a little bit how I started to make them. But first, I'm going to stay a little bit with the title, which is very, very long. But I think there are a couple of words that are important to me and says a lot about the work. The first word is curiosity cabinet. What is a curiosity cabinet? It's something that people in the 1500s had. Wealthy people had collections of curiosity cabinets. It was sort of these kind of cabinets where they showed particular strange objects like unicorn horns and blood from a vampire, or very kind of a mix of science and fantasy, basically. And to me it was really important to go back to this pre-scientific time, a time where you didn't make any difference between science, religion, philosophy. It was all in the same sphere. But at the same time, I'm in the present, and I'm using words like a commodity, which, if you study economy, you're probably really familiar with this term. But to take Martin Hägglund's definition of a commodity, the general form of a commodity is anything that has both a use value and an exchange value. So I'm saying that I am proposing that we are commodities, and mountains and stones are made into commodities, and we are made into commodities by the world we are participating in some ways. And again, in this project, I'm seeking an affinity and a closeness, and looking at the entanglements between mountains and humans and stones and humans, and the soil and humans. But there were two parallel events that actually made me start with this series, and they both had to do with quantification. And the first one was that I made a trip to Kiruna and to Gällivare in the north of Sweden, and I visited a mine called Aitik outside Gällivare. And this is the largest open pit mine in Europe. It's huge. And I'm going to show you an image from Aitik. This is Aitik, really close. So here we're actually down in the pit. You can kind of see the machines, and you see the smog, and really far up there you see the edge of where the ground is, basically. So we're really far down, underground, but in an open pit. So what really struck me when I was here was the super efficiency and quantification in the mining business, that they're weighing every truck that comes up, and they are measuring the time for the blowing up of the mountain. But they're also, I learned something that I didn't know, and that's the definition of ore, copper ore or iron ore, that's not a type of earth or mountain, it's an economic term. The ore doesn't become ore until there's an economic buoyancy in actually taking it from the ground. So that's what has made all the, for example, the move of Kiruna is all about that, because 100 years ago, there wasn't an economic buoyancy in taking out the ore that was under the city. Now there is, because we have machines, and it's probably a good stock market. Not anymore though, but used to be. But so this, I think, is really interesting as well. It's so connected to our way of looking at material as a commodity, as a resource. So at the same time, I was in a seminar in London which was called the Quantified Worker, which was super interesting, and talking a lot about how we monitor people with technological devices, and where do we kind of draw the ethical line in this kind of business. But in this talk or the seminar, they mentioned a movement called the Quantified Self, and this kind of got me really going. So I delved into this movement, which is a movement that started in California in 2007. And it's basically people who calibrate their own bodies. They kind of measure everything from what kind of mineral content they have, when they're going to eat, when they're going to sleep, how much they're going to exercise. And I think like a lightweight version of this is this kind of activity watch that you can measure your pulse and how many steps you have moved. But this is taking it to a completely other level. So I saw this. These two pursuits. They are extreme manifestations of the quantification of our society, of our world, of our universe. So I started to examine what kind of minerals do I have in my body, and looking at. And I made a rule for myself that I could only look at minerals that were also extracted from the ground. So I started out with the really basic ones like iron, copper, and I started to make these cabinets. And iron we have 6 grams, and for example coal we have a lot. This is an image of a coal cabinet that I made. And here you have 10.4 kilos of coal, which is not really surprising since we are coal based, basically, all of us. And the one I'm showing you here is lithium. So this is as much lithium that I have in my body. So you see, it's not that much. It's 6 milligrams of lithium, And lithium is quite an interesting mineral. It's really sought after because it's what we use in all the batteries for phones, computers, electrical cars. But it's also in the body. It transforms fatty acids into I kind of lost what it. Yeah, prostaglandin. But it's also known, whatever. But it's also known to some of us as a medication for bipolar disease. So those of us who have a bit of more lithium in us, we probably have that disease. But to me, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been really kind of going crazy with it. And I see it as a pedagogical project for myself and also for others. So I'm just going to show you two last pieces. This is called molybdenum, and this is really hard to see, but there are 3 little stones in there that are kind of floating inside, and they are small meteorites from Mars. And some scientists say that this mineral, molybdenum, together with another one that I have over there, which is called boron, was the 2 minerals that kind of made life begin on Earth. So that you can kind of see them as mineral seeds almost coming to Earth. Kind of a strange image. But still, I'm going to show you boron as well, if it's possible. Here we go. Here's boron. Oh, it's a bit hard to see, but it's called, I made it as an impact crater. So this is the amount of boron in my body. And I continued to make these. I also made these larger versions, as you can see with this one, for example. This is an image from Moderna Museet in Malmö. And the big one here is iron. And here I've taken the complete population of Kiruna, which is a mining town in the north of Sweden. And this is their content of iron. So I made this series of works where you have the mining town's population's content of the mineral that they are taking from the ground. And I will show you, this is actually one piece of this big chain that you can see in the image. This quite heavy, big, black cast iron thing. So this weighs maybe, I don't know, 15 kilos. And now I'm going to stop running around. And so, I mean, this whole work and the obsession with the quantification, you can take all these thoughts that I have, you can take them to an extreme. And I've been doing that as like a, not fun, but a thing to do. And then I'm actually saying that we are potential mineral depots or resources. This is, of course, a really macabre thought. But it's also maybe a bit liberating to take us away from this really individualistic way of looking at things, that we are actually material. But to put it bluntly, I'm equating humans and mountains. And I'm playing with this in different ways, as you can see, the different entanglements between myself and mountains. But I'm also questioning this society where measurability is the norm. A society where that which cannot be put into words or numbers is, by rationalization, cut away or severely degraded. And at the same time, I think my examination of the minerals in us is a way to relate and to remind us that the world is relational. At least it is to me, and I think it is to everyone. We don't really recognize it all the time. And by looking not at our distance to something that we could call other, we can look at the closeness to soil, mountains, stones. And we can recognize that we are part of a system, an ecosystem, or a whole. And I think that's the end of my little talk. And I hope you enjoyed this. And now you're allowed to go and have a coffee or something. Yes. Thank you.